same level of things, schools, zip on and on. But that unfortunately, that ultimately that was the goal. So here we have a link where folks can, if you wanted to, you could click on. I don't know if you can click on it though. We could share this here because you can't click on it because I'm presenting. So we have a link where if you wanted to, you could go into every of the categories of what the standards are, and it breaks them down by like grade and then by level. And so, if, for example, if you wanted to click on social studies, it would say sixth grade by this year, by this time of the year in sixth grade, your student should know standards are. And so, because of that, I know as a former educator, if you all were interested in talking more about the standards or even going through this, we can definitely set up a one-on-one with you all or anyone who you may know may be interested to like click on this and be able to like go through it, right? Because then I could sit and be like, oh, you want to learn about what your kindergarten student should be learning in physical education. We could definitely do that because I know that that's not something that we're going to be able to cover every single standard today because of the sake of time and because there's so many in physical education. We could definitely do that. At this point, does anyone have any questions, any comments? I know I saw some like head nodding when we were talking about, not all students are learning the same thing. And so just want to open it up for folks to express anything or ask anything that you want to ask.
So the financial literacy standard, is that across all grade levels? Or is that's new too, right?
I believe that it is. I don't know if Lee, if it's across all grade levels, but it's my understanding that it is not.
I do believe that they are putting those in each of the grade levels. I know that I do believe even kindergarten has a financial literacy piece in there as well. While Valeria is going on, I have the state standards up, and I will search through there just to see what pre-K is doing. So just to verify that, but I'm pretty sure that each grade level has to have a literacy, even if it's identifying what money is. That is literacy, right? That's financial literacy, right? Knowing what a quarter is versus a nickel. That's when you're talking about financial literacy. See, it can be just smart. It's not like how to do your taxes. That's fine. No, we're not talking about that. We're just talking about, do you know what a quarter looks like? Do you know how to add, something like that. So they're priming the pump, right? They're starting getting those kids accustomed and used to money. And so when they do get to that tax conversation in 11th or 10th or 11th grade, then it won't be foreign.
Yeah, thank you for that, Lee. You bring up a really good point. When I think of like financial literacy, I literally think about bank accounts, taxes, all these things. But it's true, like even students knowing, coins, the bills is financial literacy from a very early stage. And I can speak for my own education that I don't remember ever using that or anything like that in school. So again, right back to the issue of like the goal was for all students to know the same thing, but that's not what's happening.
But like she said, financial literacy is a new standard. I mean, and that standard, I'm not sure when it was adopted, but it's probably just recently.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it was adopted either, but I do know it's new. And that's why I was saying I'm not sure that it's per every grade level because of how new it is. Anything else from anyone? I can also go back if you felt like I was going too fast and you all want to go back and revisit something.
I was just going to say, let's see, I left Aurora in 2020. Prior to that, they were talking about financial literacy, but not so much implementing it into the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were talking about using it in what capacity if they didn't want to put it into the classroom.
That's why I say they were talking more about it instead of actually implementing it into the classroom. Yeah.
I see what you're saying. So it's like more discussion than actually putting it in place for students to use. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that happens a lot. And financial literacy, especially in communities of color, is like extremely important. for us to know these things. For sure. Anybody else?
And I guess I would want to know how they are teaching it and what information they're sharing with students.
For
Especially by the time they're in 5th grade, middle school, and high school. I would be curious to find out what they are actually teaching kids.
Yeah. Are you talking about specifically financial literacy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question, and I will be honest, I don't know the answer to that because I've not seen it implemented in classrooms. But that's something that we can definitely take back to our team, and maybe somebody has, or maybe someone knows something, or we can do some research on that because I personally do not know. Lee, I'm not sure if you do. I think you're on mute, Lee, if you were trying to talk.
Yeah, I'm going through the standards. It's 147 pages of the social studies standards alone. That so digging through that is going to be so much fun. But I haven't heard anything. I know that a couple of years ago I did, right before COVID hit. We several of us were asked to sit on the mathematics task force, the implementation task force for Aurora, trying to figure out how to get these standards, the standards that were revised, how to start implementing them, what that looked like. And so we had different math teachers there. We had, and actually, let me back it up. This was more for having, okay, now I'm lying. Okay, let me back up. It was more toward getting high schoolers ready for college. What they found out that students just were not ready for college. They weren't mathematically prepared. What could they be doing? What are the process? What's missing in the high school? And even in what we found out that we needed to start having these conversations in junior high, start having these conversations in junior high, lower middle school, and elementary school. These are the conversations we needed to start having. And so that was the recommendation that this task force had given to APS to see, these are the things you need to start implementing. This is how, and creating those pipelines from the colleges, to those middle schools. We need to start having those conversations earlier on, rather than waiting to 11th and 12th grade when kids' minds are made up about what, where their future is pretty much, or where they're standing are when it comes to math, or even getting into the mathematic world. So some work has been done, but like COVID just kind of wiped everything out. But I will, what I'll do, Sherry, I'll go back and I will get my contact and we'll see just what happens. How's that been implemented? So we can do that.
Okay, I just wanted to know, because I wanted to know, are they teaching more math, or are they teaching more on what is money? How is money a tool? So I was thinking about how are they pushing that out when they say financial literacy?
Yeah, like what exactly do they mean by that? Yeah, I think those are really good questions. Thank you for that. I appreciate you bringing that up, because when I think of it, I'm like thinking taxes, banks, how to write a check. But there's so much more to it that it would be interesting to see how they're translating that. And that actually, that's literally what this slide is saying, right? Like each teacher in school determines how they translate standards into curriculum. So like across different schools and even classrooms, it's going to look different how they're taught. And that could mean the book that they're reading, right? Like if students all have to learn about the Holocaust, the teachers and schools ultimately choose the books that they want to use to teach about that. Therefore, like it's not the goal of like all kids learn the same thing isn't exactly working out if at the end of the day the schools, the state, the schools, and then teachers are choosing the topics that they want to cover. Specifically in this case, the slide is talking about social studies. Oh no, is this from?
And I was just kind of scanning. Hi, I'm Lynn Jackson. And I was just kind of scanning through, and what you just said kind of makes a lot of sense. When I was teaching 2nd grade, we had different modules that really talked about like goods and services, which kind of, it kind of lends itself to finances. There was a part, and I would expand it to, taking them to the store and showing them how to purchase items and what taxes are. So it really is found a lot in the social studies, but it seems like, I just kind of pulled up something. It says financial literacy education and Common Core state standards. So I think it is going to lend itself to the level of, the different grade levels, but it says things like income and careers, planning and money management, credit and debt, debit, risk management and insurance, savings and investing. So I think it's going to kind of lend itself to there, but how they're going to implement it is the question, but it's going to lend itself to, the educator, be able to pull it out, but it is housed a lot in the social studies curriculum. So when I was teaching, it was in the social studies, because as you all just mentioned about the math component and stuff like that. Yeah, in second grade, we did implement, teaching about money, but it wasn't like, it wasn't a mastery, it wasn't considered one of the quote unquote the masteries, versus knowing a place value was something of mastery to take them to the next level. So I think it's a matter of, teachers being able to actually say they actually teaching instead of teaching at it versus actually teaching it. So that's kind of what I was kind of gathering from it, because that was one of my passions. In second grade, they were going to learn financial literacy.
Right. So real quick, Valeria, let me just pop in.
Yeah,
I want to. So this is pre-K. So I've looked up the standards. So it says, for example of learning, this is under economics. Example of learning. Children may, 1, engage dramatic play, playing various job roles and pretend to perform work associated with their chosen job. 2, use pretend money while engaging in dramatic play activities. 3, pretend to have jobs to be paid for their work. And 4, exchange money, materials, or service. And that's bolded in red. Now, and I'll talk about the different indicators of the red, the green, and the purple in the new state standards, but exchange money, materials, or service for goods through play. And when you say material, and well, since we're talking about it, so red. So and my portion is we're going to walk through the standard, and in each of the standards, we're going to see what has been recommended, what has been taken out, and it will be denoted by the different colorings. So red is the recommendation of revisions through the committee, through the revision committee that we'll talk a little bit about as well. So so when you talk about what teachers will be teaching students and what they'll be learning, that's that example, that's that portion of that. And that's throughout the whole standards. You will see that how that is written out, where you can get a good idea of what that looks like.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
And then just to kind of complicate things a little bit more, as we know that schools are not all learning the same thing. We have autonomous schools who have the right as autonomous schools and the agency to choose their own standards and curriculum that they're then using in the classroom that translates into what students are seeing every day. So I was a teacher at a private Catholic school in Denver, and we did not use the Common Core standards. The Archdiocese of Denver had their own standards that we were using in the classroom that were kind of similar to the standards for the Common Core. I taught 6th, 7th, and 8th language arts, and they were similar, but there were definitely differences for sure. And so we just want to make that known to folks, right? The charter schools, private schools, even if students are homeschooled, that's a whole other, I'm like, what do people say? That's a whole other beast, right? We have all these public schools that are supposed to be following the Common Core, and even then, not all students are learning the same thing. And then we have other schools, right, that either for better or for worse get to choose their own standards. Who knows? There might be charter schools and autonomous schools that have a different set of standards and curriculum that maybe are better serving students. It may not be it may be the case, it may not be the case. But, and then I'm sure, as you all know too, if they're not academically being successful, the state still has, even though they can't dictate what they use in the classroom, the state can close them down if they're not succeeding or serving students well academically. So this is again, as teachers, I'm sure you all, former educators, or maybe current educators, and folks that are engaged in education of the family members that you all probably know this, right? Academic standards and how they translate into curriculum. And so, the standards dictate what the content that you're learning from day to day. So that's what we were talking about earlier. Like if you're learning about the Holocaust, the content, the curriculum would be like, what book are you reading? And so on. And then using what the students have learned throughout the year, then we have standardized testing to ensure that students are meeting standards and not learning them, is how we engage that by testing students every spring. As you all know, that time of the year was always wild in Catholic schools. I don't know about public schools, but it was a wild time. I don't miss that. And then here I'll hand it off to Lee, who's going to go more into detail, like the social studies standards that we have and how those are being reviewed, and what those reviews look like. Because so the reviews have been done. Folks had the opportunity to visit the reviews and add comments. That deadline passed. It was, I believe, it was in February, and so right now the state board is reviewing those and is checking out all of the revisions. Lee, I'm gonna hand it off to you.
Okay. Thank you so much, Valeria.
Just let me say next when you need to turn the slide, because I'm
okay. And I may have to turn off my camera, ladies, because my internet's a little shaky. So I don't want to lose you. It won't let me be great. So anyway, so if I need to, I'll do that. So like Valeria said, I'll be talking about the state standards for social studies. Now, just to give you some context, every few years, the state standards by law have to be reviewed by the hold on, let me double check. Let me make sure I'm saying that right. By the school board, okay, by the state school board. They have to be revised. And so currently what we're looking at now is we're looking at July 2020 to July 2022, which is where we are now. What's up for review are dance, drama, theater, music, social studies, which includes personal finance literacy, and visual arts. July of 2022 to June 2024, in that area, in that timeline, what will be under review is going to be comprehensive health. So just to get you guys, just like Valeria said, we came in late on this. See, they were starting to get this conversation in 2020. So now we know what's up for review. So we'll have a better idea. So in July of 2022 to June 2024, comprehensive health, computer science, physical education, and world language. Then in July of 2024 to June of 2026, what will be under review would be English language proficiency, mathematics, reading, writing, communication, and science. So those are going to be, those are the standards in the future that are going to be up, but not, but in July, let's start looking at what's going to be happening so we can have a voice in that. And so what the state standards aren't just randomly done. They're created, there's a revision committee that is created from either students or teachers, social studies teachers, community members, and an admin. So they are the people that get together. I think the commitment is like for 2 years that they work on these standards. And from what Valeria has looked at the standards, some of our colleagues from our organization, they looked at the standards, which are former teachers, and said these standards are on point. They're really good. They do address diversity, equity, and inclusion in that, which is great, which is why you hear probably the CRT nonsense going on. I'm sorry, and so anyway, we won't get into that, but anyway, but that's something that is happening. So these are some great standards, and we really want them to pass. So with that said, if we're looking at our slide here, the categories for social studies is going to be history, geography, economics, civics, personal and financial literacy. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide. Next. Okay, and when you're looking at the standards, and this is the breakdown. So we'll have the grade first. the standard category. And remember, our category was going to be history, geography, civics, da da da. And then they'll have the grade level expectation. So it'll say that upon graduation, the graduate should know this, and this, right? The evidence outcome. Then under that, the academic context and connections. So that will be the Colorado essential skills, inquiry questions, skills, disciplinary information, and media literacy. So those are the things that will be connected to that. Okay, next. Next, Larry. Cool. Okay, so this is the setup. This is what that looks like. So it'll be sixth grade, which is what we're going to be looking at. The standard was going to be 1, which will be history. And it tells us that prepared graduate, so after their time in sixth grade, they should know how to analyze historical time periods and patterns of continuity, change through multiple perspectives within and among cultural society. Okay, if you look at the red, remember we talked about different colors in these in the standard markups that will denote what's happening. So this is the red is added. So the black language has already been there, but what they've added was investigate the historical errors and so on. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So we see that they have taken some stuff out and they have added. And if we look through, this is under evidence outcome, so students can. So this is what they should learn. So this is when they graduate or leave sixth grade, this is what should be what they should walk away with. We see that the purple indicates the state standard, the state board adopted Holocaust and genocide standards. So that's what that was put in. I think that was adopted a couple years ago, but this is the implementation of that. Okay, next. And that just gives you some more more examples of what the state standards look like. And remember, these are like 100, just the state standards alone for social studies is 147 pages because it goes through pre-K all the way to 12th grade. So it gives you an idea, but the breakdown is pretty much what we're seeing now. So if you want to know a particular grade, you can go right to it. And it's a lot of information, but it's pretty easy to navigate. Okay, and you see the purple, they did put ethnic, which satisfies the Holocaust genocide. Okay, next. Okay, and these are the inquiry questions. And as you can see now, they did add how and why have civilizations experience continuity and change over time? For example, how do philosophies and ideas from ancient civilization and indigenous peoples continue to inform and affect the present? See, I mean, this is some really good stuff. We see that there has been some in-depth thought processes in the work that the updates have been. And it really allows those sixth graders to think thoroughly outside the box. It allows them to really, to be engaged, to talk about other people, that don't look like them necessarily, but to ask those engaging questions, right? And you'll see that throughout the new updated standards, which, like I said, we are really pushing that. We want them to go ahead and adopt these and change this to these new revisions. I'll stop there. Does anybody have any questions at this time?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about, because I love history, I hope that I know so many children have a hard time looking at the past. And so I really hope that they're making those connections with what's going on now, with the pandemic, with what's going on in the Ukraine, all of those things. I mean, 9/11, there's so many things that have happened present that can connect to some of that. And sometimes I always wonder, instead of starting in the past, start in the present and then connect the past to that. Because kids are more aware, those that are old enough, to what's happening now.
Absolutely. In sixth grade, if you look at the last two questions, how do groups of people become marginalized? That that's a new addition. And then 5, how have technological developments continued to evolve and affect the present? So bringing them up to date with that questioning as well, right? Like, social media has run amok for so many. TikTok. Listen, I'm addicted, so I get it. So me and TikTok are like this, so I get it. So this really, it has so many ways that teachers can get creative in teaching history. I mean, long gone are just going through textbooks, right? Because textbooks, they're not always correct, right?
Right.
We've heard the watering down of history in our textbooks. And so this gives an opportunity for teachers to introduce other ways of teaching, which is great, right? And so,
how are parents included in all this? And how are parents? How do they know what to hold their schools or teachers accountable for what their child should be learning? I mean, there's a lot, like you said, 147 pages. So how do they engage parents in this process so that parents are informed and know what it is that their child should be learning or what their child should know at every grade level?
I think this is why me and Valeria are here. This is why we're here. We're giving teachers or parents some tools to work with, to give them knowledge, and also giving them opportunities to engage. So DAC and Vernon, I'm gonna lean on you. So the District Accountability Committee. So though that's an organization that parents can be involved in, right? SACPI, which is crazy name, but the State Advisory Council for Parent Involvement in Education. These are the things that are out there. That's a high level, but even at the grassroots level, just to go in with their teachers. I mean, as former educators, and Brennan, you can speak to this, having parents to show up and ask those questions. What is my child learning? Sitting down with the teacher doing one-on-ones. I know that Valeria and we talked about the standards, but there's a step after that. There's some accountability that we want to make sure that these things are put into place. How do we do that? What do we have to do? We know that parents have power. And so with their voices, we know that they are able to ask those questions more so than outsiders, right? Folks who don't have any type of connection in that school, but parents have a right to ask those questions. So I think that right there, bringing people in such as ourselves to talk about this, to give you that, we should give that piece of information and you guys can just run with it, right? And Valeria, anything else you wanted to talk about with that?
Yeah, I was just going to add that the previous slide, I really appreciated this and support. Great is in support because we believe in inclusive, transparent, and comprehensive education, but we also believe in students becoming critical thinkers. And so that's why we're in support of the standards. And also just wanted to add too that we have heard some feedback from a few folks that say that students with disabilities are not being included in the history and social studies and the revision of the standards. And so while we're in support of them, I'm sure there are still community groups or groups of folks that don't feel represented even in the new review. And then I love your question, Janet, because we do have some information about that a little. I think it's next. I might be wrong about that. About what does accountability look like and community and parent involvement. Because again, right, we are most definitely bringing community very late into this conversation, as folks don't even have the option to go and visit or comment the revisions because they're already in the hands of State Board of Education and will be voted on next month.
Thank you for that, Valeria. And here's just another slide just to give you more information about what's remaining and what they're taking out and what's being added to just to satisfy that inclusive and comprehensive education that that Valeria talked about. So I love number 4, historical thinkers examine and evaluate data for context, purpose, perspective, bias, and cooperation. I mean, imagine what they could really do with this information. So anyway, next slide. And then this is just some more information about the disciplinary information and media literacy that is also in the breakdown of what this the social studies standards revision looks like. And so that'll just give you an idea of that as well. And next slide. And this is just a link and to how to review the revisions. And we will share this information with Vernon, and he can definitely get that to you guys. You can also go to the CDE, and you can bring up revisions, state standard revisions, and it'll also pop up to give you some information as well. Okay, and next slide. And this is a call to action. So as Larry was saying, that Great Ed does support these new state standards, and we want to make sure that you guys are aware that we are doing a petition that we can send to these the Colorado State Board, let them know that folks want, parents, community members, teachers want these state standards approved. So you can sign Great Ed's petition in favor of the revisions, and we'll also send that information out to you as well. Valeria, can you put that in the chat? Am I
I can't because I'm presenting, but
oh, right. Okay.
I can put that link.
Okay, thank you so much. And then also too, you can write a letter or send an email in support of the revisions. That's the second way of doing it. Or you can sign up for public comment at is this, I think I may have made this mistake. Is this the sign up for public comment at the state board meeting?
It should say April 13th. We apologize for that.
Okay. That is my bad. I apologize. So it's April 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're voting on April 13th, and that process looks like you would have to show up the day of the day of the voting, and in the morning, and the sign-up sheet is usually put up by 9 a.m. And so even the process to go speak at the board is not accessible because people are working, people are caregivers, people have things that they need to do, right? And so if you wanted to sign up, you literally have to physically show up and in the morning, put your name on a sheet of paper, and then kind of wait around for your opportunity to be able to speak about why you're in support of public comment. If that is something that you're interested in doing and you have the time and the capacity to do that, please do let us know. But it's not an expectation that we have of anyone to do just because of like the lack of accessibility in the process itself. But you know, like Lee mentioned, there's writing the letter or an email or signing our petition. If you want your letter, email, or even the comments that you write in the petition read at the board, you like have to specifically state that at the beginning. You have to say, I want this read during public comment at the state board meeting, and then you would write whatever it is that you feel or wish to share with the State Board of Education.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Okay, and next slide.
So this is the slide that I was excited about when you asked that question, because when we were working on this presentation, actually a colleague of ours named Tamika was like, I as a parent didn't know that there were standards for art, and because she's an engaged parent and she's informed, she's like, I know that I can ask these questions to my child's teacher to see like, why are you teaching this? You know, what's the standard? And so on. And so she told us, like, I think it's important, you know, giving her the credit for this, because this was definitely not my idea. Like, it's important for parents and community members to know that they have the right, more than right, to ask these questions to their teachers, to the teachers that are teaching their children, you know, like, what subjects are being taught? What are the most important ideas my child needs? What does my child need to be successful? How is my child assessed, right? In her experience, her child wasn't receiving good grades in art, and she was like, why? Like, I know my daughter is artistic, like she does great art. Come to find out there's these standards and she wasn't meeting the standards, but in reality her art just looked different, but she was more than meeting the standard, right? And so these are questions that folks can ask. Like, you have every right in the world to walk into a school and ask teachers this question. Then, though, we get into the conversation of accountability. And so when this was brought to us in December, like literally weeks before winter break, before the holidays. And my first question was like, how would we hold schools and teachers accountable to like actually implementing these standards in the content that they're teaching in the classroom. And we talked to some state board members, and they were like, there isn't really an accountability process. What it would look like for you to hold people accountable right now would be that you would go to your local board, right? So if you're in DPS, you would go to the DPS board, and you would tell them that, like, that these standards aren't being taught in the classroom. Then they would make the decision if they want to do something or not. If you feel like they don't do something or you're not happy with what they did, you can then reach out to the state board, and if then they would reach out back to you, and then there was like this whole process. So that to me felt like there is an accountability, like in full transparency. My opinion, Vernon knows this. I am not a filtered person, right? Like, I just say I'm sure Janet and Sherry know too, from when we used to be in the DPS coalition together. Like, I'm not a filtered person. I haven't cussed today, and I'm proud of myself in this presentation because I usually do. Yay me, my mom would be proud. She's upstairs. I haven't cussed, but like the reason why I get so worked up is because like these are issues that like my parents dealt with when I was in school. I graduated from Hinckley High School in 2009, and my parents never, aside from conferences, never stepped into the school to say like, what can my kid do to be successful? Like, my mom and my dad did not know that they had the power and the right to go and do that, right? And so this is why I get really worked up about these things. And even as like a former educator, is that I feel like there's like this lack of accountability. And so that actually concludes our presentation. But to me, something that I thought was important to discuss, if you want to, right? If you're like, no, actually, we want to talk about this other slide, please do tell me. But I'm like, what would an accountability process look like? As community members, as family members, as parents, as former educators, what would it look like to hold schools and teachers accountable to make sure that these standards that are being inclusive of BIPOC histories and marginalized groups are actually being used in the classroom? That is like the big question